Bernie, you look amazing. I am so glad to get a chance to talk to you and see you. The beard is looking really good, man, because that seems to be the COVID-19 fashion. Every guy's got to have some kind of beard. How are you holding up throughout all this, my friend?
Well, I'm doing fine, really. I mean, cabin fever, like everybody else, I can't wait for things to return to some kind of normalcy. I miss seeing my friends and having lunches and all the rest. And of course, miss miss doing concerts, with Bruce Coburn, and that just shut right down. But I guess my view is it's getting better. I think there's light at the end of the tunnel, and it's been very, very sad for a lot of people, and I realize that. And so I'm not in the mood to complain, really. I've done okay considering.
You know, um, there's a reason why, of course, we're talking here. Something to do with the SOCAN Awards, which we're going to mention in a second. But I just want to say right off the top, and how much respect I have for you, for everything that you've done for the Canadian music industry. Because what we're going to talk about really is something that's much deserved. And I got to tell you something too, right off. When I first heard about you, reading up about you and then met you, and it could have been, I'm thinking probably Canadian Music Week in one of my earlier ones back in the 90s or something like that. I used to be terrified of you because I used to
Right.
think this guy, like if I even just breathe next to him, he could go like that. My career is all destroyed. And then when I get a chance to talk to you, one of the most nicest, open people that I've ever met. And I want to say thank you so much for making things so comfortable for me um, in the position that you were in.
Well, I appreciate that. So thank you for the compliments. I don't think I hope I wasn't that scary.
No, you know how it is. It's just that when you respect somebody so much, you're always like, oh, I don't want to, say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing or whatever else. And then you find out, like I said, the most, down to earth person with all the things that you've done throughout the decades. It's an amazing thing when you look back at what you've been able to accomplish and not just help the music industry, the broadcast industry, and so many artists. How do you feel about being part of that fabric?
Well, I'm very proud of what I managed to do, but Rudy, really, you may find this kind of odd, but I always think about the things I didn't do. I always go, oh man, I could have put out more records, or I could have done this, or could have done that. And, not that I'm walking around feeling bad, but you know, I guess I'm not sitting around resting on my laurels. Let's put it that way, you know. But I feel generally happy with what I managed to do, and I certainly love a lot of the music we put out. I think I love it all, actually. I've been sort of guilty of people go, "Oh, there's Bernie. He loves everything he did," but it's because I did, and but I do. I often think I go, oh, well, maybe I could have done more of this or more of that. And I think that's the way I see it.
Well, you were such a pioneer, and that's one of the reasons why we're talking. I've got my phone open up here because I want to make sure I've got this said exactly. Because as we look at May 24th, SOCAN Awards, so many awards are going to be given out. One of them, the SOCAN Original 24 CanCon Visionaries, will be honored this year, and you, my friend, are on that list as a SOCAN Guardian Award winner. How do you feel about being part of this list? Because really, the word guardian is so important because that's what you and the rest have done.
Well, I'm very proud to be on that list and to get that award. It's one of the things I do look back at and go, that's something that was really important, was to fight for Canadian content. And and to continue to fight for Canadian content. And actually, we need to keep on fighting for it as time in the times we're in now. But I'm proud of that, and that's a great group of people that they've decided to acknowledge, and I'm very proud to be part of that. And I'm proud of what I did when in those early days, talking about the middle 60s through to the middle 70s, I guess. And in my case, on and on. I mean, I continue right to this day to still fight for these things, although I'm not on the front line so much anymore. You know, they put you out to pasture as you get older.
Nah, you never. But let's talk a little bit about that because for the younger folks who may not realize this, because they hear Drake and they hear The Weeknd and so many other Canadian artists who are out there. Even with myself, growing up in the my prime time, I would say is the '80s. The Corey Harts and the Bruce Coverns and so many other great Canadian artists that were just booming on radio. Before that, though, it wasn't easy to be a Canadian artist to get on radio. Can you talk a little bit about that, please, and the struggle for Canadian artists to be heard?
Well, the reason that Canadian content regulations came along was because by general consensus, there was an agreement that Canadian music just wasn't going to get exposed without help. And I'll give you a little fact. In 1969, there apparently was only 1.5% of all of the music played on commercial radio. So I'm leaving out college and CBC. Only 1.5% was Canadian. And when you go back to that period, 69, 70s, radio was the most important means of exposure and still remains a very important means of exposure. Even in today's internet dominated world, it's still very important. So people got together and decided to work with the government, lobby the government, and try to get changes made so that Canadian radio would have to play Canadian music. Now, I don't like to point a finger at Canadian radio because there was Canadian radio playing some Canadian records. I reckon I owned a few of them, so I know that. But in general, Canadian music was just not being given fair exposure across the board. And we needed to change that. And I think that's one of the reasons why we do have Weeknd today and Drake and all of these wonderful Canadian acts that are internationally successful. I mean, they're great and they could do well without it. I understand that. But, there was no industry here. There was very few recording studios. There was no magazines. And that all just sort of bloomed starting in January 1, 1971, when those regulations became law.
Wow, I just got shivers from this, hearing you say that. I'm curious though, and I've never asked anybody about this, but I've always heard about this. When these regulations were coming in, were some radio stations purposely trying to put Canadian artists just at night and not heard during the day?
Yes, they had all kinds of ways to get around it, and we being generally the music business, not always me, but people became aware of these kinds of tricks, and we got changes made, to the regulations. But yes, so what would happen is the CanCon hour would be 4 o'clock in the morning, between 4 and 5 a.m., and they'd play 100% Canadian to help make up for the 30. In those days, originally it was 25%. than 30%. And then later we fought and we got it up to 35%. But, and by the way, about 10 years after it went up to 35%, radio themselves, to get licenses, started volunteering to play 40%.
Wow.
So it could easily be done. There's so much talent in Canada, but they had all kinds of ways to do that, you know, to keep the music out of prime time. And, you know, not everybody did that. And again, you know, it's difficult. Listen, I'm very proud of what I've done. I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything that I did. I might want to try to do it better, but I wouldn't change it. But at the same time, you know, I understood what radio was doing. They were importing a great business from the US where all the hits were already made and putting them on the radio and making a lot of money. So they just didn't want to have that trouble of trying to figure out whether a Bruce Cockburn record was good enough to play on the radio. So they just didn't play them. They used to have a thing called the Canadian Content Bin, and that was the waste paper basket in the
I remember
office.
that.
Throw the records in them. Yeah, it's on the record. I mean, the way we know that is radio admitted it, you know. but you know, I'll tell you what, a few years after the regulations came in most cases, radio came around and they were very supportive. And, you know, we all learned to live with each other and to, I think, make a great success out of the regulation. And it's been a great success. There's no, I often have people ask me, you know, do you think it worked? Do I think it worked? Of course I think it worked. Look at how important Canadian music is now. So even during this pandemic, you know, it's still clear, you know, so yeah.
Just curious though, but when you have artists like the Gordon Lightfoot, Murray McLaughlin, the Guess Who, when you have these artists performing in the US with #1 hits, does it not register back then that, hey, these Canadians are doing #1 down there, why are we not playing them the way they should be portrayed here in Canada?
Yeah. Well, just for clarity, I promoted Gordon's shows in Canada, but I didn't really manage Gordon. You know, my partner, Bernie Fiedler, ended up doing that to some degree. Or did I manage the Guess Who? But, you know, well, your question invites the thought that Canadians that had hits in the US had no trouble getting airplay in Canada. It's still kind of like that, you know, it hasn't changed all that much. But back then, before Canadian content, if you had a hit in the US, you were guaranteed airplay in Canada. That was the easiest way on the radio in Canada because they were playing the US top 30. And if you were in the US top 30 in Canadian, you were going to get played here. So yeah, I mean, I think the evidence that Canadian music was great was always in front of everybody. And it just took a little bit of a push and a little bit of time for it to be generally agreed that it's a good thing. And it's a really good thing. I mean, you know, it's so obvious. It's like just really, really wonderful to see. I mean, I'm not as up to date as I could be now, but it's just so wonderful to see how many Canadian artists are incredibly successful at this point. And of course, I live here in Toronto, so it's kind of nice to see how many of them are living right here in Toronto as well. But it doesn't matter where you're from in Canada. It's just great to see Canadian music do well.
Absolutely. And one of the platforms that has helped put Canadian music out there is True North Records. When you created this, what was the thought behind this? And how did you see this grow for Canadian artists?
Well, the short answer is I wanted to start a label because I'd had 2 experiences managing acts that were on major labels. nothing wrong with major labels. They treated us well. But I realized that I couldn't do all the things I wanted with a major label. I wasn't going to win all the arguments. So I decided I should start my own label so I could win all my arguments. I could do what I wanted to do and make my own mistakes. Let's put it that way, instead of living with somebody else's mistakes. And I wanted to start a label that would have highly identified with quality, but I wanted to also have hit records. So I tried to do both, and we had some great successes with people like Rough Trade and Carol Pope and Barney Ventall. I managed Dan Hill. Our company had 3 divisions. It had a label, it had a management company, it had publishing. So sometimes I worked with an act in all 3 divisions, sometimes in just one division. But we had Dan and then later, and we had Blackie and the Rodeo Kings. And around the time I sold, Blackie and the Rodeo Kings were my last sort of major act. And of course, Murray McLaughlin and Bruce Coburn and Syrinx and but later I put out some Randy Bachman records and Lenny Breau records. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. It was great fun. There was always some frustration to get things done. So I wanted the label to stand for quality. But my heroes were people like Sam Phillips or the Chess Brothers. I mean, yeah, they had their rough sides, but they made great records, and they made great hits as well. And that's who I looked at, and I went, yeah, if I could do something like that, I'll be happy.
I'm curious, what was it like for the transition? Because we talked about radio, everything was focused. We need to have a hit. We got to get it on radio. We come into the 80s where not just vinyl is now becoming CDs, but also now the music that we listen to becomes more visual, as in the music video. How did that transition work out? Because now it's almost like you got to wait for the video to come out for it to become a hit on radio. It's sort of like now turned around.
Well, I have a great inside look at that because I helped found, along with Moses Neimer and the people at Much Music, Video Fact, which funded so many Canadian videos. I left after 25 years, and they went on for another 5 years, I think, or maybe even 10 more years. I don't know. But so I don't know where it ended up. But when I got out of Video Fact, we'd already spent $60 million doing Canadian videos or supporting them. And it was a wonderful thing. I loved video. I thought it was really, really good. I mean, I think a lot of bad videos got made. Let's put it, let me get even more specific. A lot of bad videos got made with some very good songs. I think. But on the other hand, it exposed the music to a whole new audience and interested people in a whole new way. And there was some great videos. I mean, obviously, you got to start at the top there with Michael Jackson and just how he changed the face of the music business, and largely through his videos, really. It's hard to separate the music from the video, but the videos certainly helped. And it was really, really important. I thought video was really good for my label. We made some good videos, whether it be Rough Trades videos or Bruce's more political videos, many of which are still being played. Even today, I'll look on the internet and I'll go, wow, if I had a rocket launcher, it has 1 million views, and I go, wow, that's good. And video remains super important today. Not so much on TV, but obviously on the net, on YouTube. And yeah, I mean, I get to see, I'm always looking at something on YouTube, you know, that's kind of how I see my new music, to tell you the truth. That's where, you know, I'll read about an act and I'll go, okay, let's see, you know. And so it remains super important. And, you know, but you see these things change, you know, music business to some degree changes based on the technology. So back, the reason hit records were 3 minutes long was because that's all you could get on a 78 at one time. That was what the technology allowed. So that's what people wrote, or at least the technology allowed for high quality, for quality sound. And it's always been like that. And then along comes the LPs and you can do more. Then comes the CDs and there's no end to how much time, well, there is an end, but how much time you can get. And now we're into something entirely different, which I don't propose to let you know or to tell you that I'm an expert on, but you know, the internet and the digital age is entirely new. I think it's really good. Again, I see it just through the lens of working with just the one act left that I work with, because I'm more retired from music than I am. Well, you never quite retire from music, but from the music business, I'm more retired from it, and I see that the digital world has been good for my act, for Bruce, because how many people are going to play a song like If I Had a Rocket Launcher? It's not going to get exposed on today's radio at all. It doesn't fit anywhere. I get it. I mean, it should. I'm not saying it makes me happy, but you know, it doesn't matter all that much because it's being exposed all the time on the internet. People use it for this and for that. And I like that. It's really, really good. So just to use that one song as an example. So
you
I think these technological changes are generally good. You know, I'm not convinced even that the idea that people don't get paid enough. People could get paid more, believe me, and I'm all in favor of getting those rates up. But I doubt that we're going to get asked to do a benefit concert for Weekend very soon, or for Drake. I mean, I think they're making enough. Yeah, I'm not saying they shouldn't make more, but for instance, you know, or for Shawn Mendes or whomever, you know. So I mean, the music business has always been a place where not everybody is rewarded. Whether it's fair or not, I don't really know. I'm not the one to know that.
do we blame Napster for that? Because Napster really was the beginning for what we have now with Spotify and
Yes.
Apple and the rest.
Yeah, Napster was the beginning, and you know, history shows us that to some degree the record business responded kind of badly to Napster. They didn't understand it, and they saw their future being taken away and their royalties being taken away, and I could see that. I mean, again, I'm not blaming anybody, but Napster was the beginning, and I think that the people that showed it, showed the best side of the new age were Apple at the beginning, when Apple started selling downloads. That showed the record business what could be done. And yeah, it's good. I think it's good the way things are. I don't miss, to tell you the truth, I don't miss my CDs or vinyl all that much. It's not going to make me popular. It doesn't make me hip, but I don't mind listening to music streaming. I don't mind at all. Is the sound as good as it should be? No, it's not. Could it be better? Yes. Could I make it better? Yes. But do I find it handy and available? Absolutely, and I like that.
I will
But
say
I'm
this
lazy.
much. I will say this much. When it comes to traveling, yes, absolutely agree. It's kind of nice to have just this little box thing in your hand that's got like, 5,000 songs on it and you can take anywhere with you.
Yeah.
But vinyl, as you know, has been making a comeback for the last couple of years. Why do you
Yes. Yeah.
think that is? I think everybody has their own personal choice and why they think it's been making a comeback. Why do you think it's been making a comeback?
Well, it's good. I haven't thought about why. I mean, first off, there are a lot of people out there like Neil Young and others of import who constantly tell you and tell the audience that things sound better on vinyl. So to some degree, people are interested in that, in good sound, and that's good. And I'm not sure I agree 100% that vinyl sounds better than a CD, but I think both vinyl and CDs sound better than average streaming. I don't think there's any doubt about that in my mind. Um, and I think vinyl, it's almost like a hobby. It's like as if people were stamp collecting or coin collecting vinyl, and it's neat. I mean, vinyl's neat. It's got these big panels, 12 by 12. I mean, we used to love putting together our graphics. We were so proud of the graphics we did with pictures from Norval Morrisseau or pictures from Alex Colville or just the work that Bart Scholes or Michael Rycraft did on those vinyl records. So I think people like to collect them, and so they're kind of a rarity. And I understand. I get it. I bless them. Thank you for liking that stuff. We put out a lot of vinyl ourselves, and we put out a vinyl box set to celebrate our 50th anniversary of the label, which I don't own anymore, but have an interest in making sure it's going well. And we only did around 1,000 copies, I guess 750 signed copies with 5 albums in it. 5 albums, it was very expensive, sold out in one day, just gone, completely. So yeah, I think vinyl, I think people just, it's a very tangible item to hold in your hands. And it does sound good. I mean, if you have a good turntable, it sounds good. But I always remember the little clicks all the time.
I miss
I
that.
always go, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I guess I do too. Do you
And
have
of
a vinyl?
Oh yeah, we kept all of our vinyl, and I always say to younger folks too, if you want to know about having skill, try dropping the needle down on a vinyl. Let me see you
Yeah,
try to do that. They would look and go,
back forward.
ah,
Yeah,
but you were born to
yeah,
do it. So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's been an amazing time in Canadian music, and like I said, you've been such a strong force in this. Where do you see the music industry in the next 10 to 20 years? Because things move so fast. It's like 1 second, it's Spotify, next second, it's something else that we've never heard of. 1 second, it's Twitter, next thing, it's TikTok. You got to be on that or whatever else is new. Where do you see the industry? Because TikTok is a big part of the music industry now.
Well, yeah, these TikTok and these various things, but for the first time in quite a long time, there's there I don't think there's anything right now on the horizon. Years and years ago on the horizon, people went, one day there'll be CDs. They may not have called them CDs, but back in the vinyl age, there was that was talked about for several years before it finally hit the street. And then during the CD age, there was a lot of talk about how one day it'll all be digitally delivered. People had different ideas of how it'd be delivered. I don't know that anybody predicted exactly Spotify or Apple Music or any of the others. But right now, at least in my world, and I admit that my world is not the most on the edge, I don't hear anybody talking about what the next breakthrough is after Spotify, because I see things like TikTok and Instagram and the rest. They're all like applications, using what's already around and doing it in a different way. But I don't hear any talk about what, I mean, the biggest talk right now, frankly, is when are we going to have concerts again? When's live music coming back? So, and that's what we're all looking forward to, is getting live music back. Rudy, I mean, I don't know about you, but I sure miss it.
Same
And
here.
I don't know what's going to happen when it comes back. Exactly. So, I probably it'll be fine, but there's a little part of me that worries. Maybe a lot of people won't want to go out anymore. I don't know. I don't know. There's been a lot of change, and I don't know what those changes are myself. But the one thing I know we got to be careful about, if you don't mind me repeating it,
Please.
is we must continue to fight for Canadian content in this day and age, one way or the other, because with the world being dominated by Facebook and Spotify and others, they're not obliged to play Canadian music and or to support Canadian music, whereas Rogers is, or Bell is, or the big broadcasters, well, big or small broadcasters. So there's still a fight. You still, in a way, Canadian content is like democracy. You got to fight for it every day. If you don't, you can lose it. And we don't want to lose it. I don't think we want to lose it.
Definitely not. Just two more questions. One, what advice can you give those artists out there, those young ones who are, struggling to get through this? I was just talking to Stuart from the Tea Party, and we were talking about how, some of these young artists have decided to give up their dream because they got to make money. They're doing what they can to get regular jobs. What advice can you give them that hopefully they don't have to give up the dream? Maybe they have to put it aside for a moment, but hopefully not give it up and continue, because this is an amazing industry.
Well, I mean, usually we don't have a pandemic. So advice during the pandemic is you got to take it with a grain of salt in a way. I mean, it depends on how hard the pandemic is really hitting you. But if we didn't have the pandemic and you're a young artist or an artist starting out, whatever age you are, I think the best advice I can give to anybody, it's a bit of a cliche, is to keep on working at it, keep on struggling, keep up the struggle. And also don't end up chasing your tail. I mean, listen to what people tell you, because there'll be some good information, but don't, person A says, do it this way, so you do it that way. Then person B says, no, do it that way, so you do it that way. And pretty soon you don't know what you're doing. So I feel if you're young and if you feel that you've got something good going on, that you should stick to it. Yes, you should listen to what people have to say, for sure. And yes, you can absorb some good things, but make smart decisions. And one of the real smart decisions is to keep at it. Just keep on fighting, and if you're good, you'll get there.
Definitely.
I'm optimistic about that.
Last question: how do you want your legacy to be remembered and cherished?
Oh well, I don't know the answer to that question, to tell you the truth. I guess it's a very good question. I always think about my act's legacies. I don't think about my own. I guess it's simply, I wouldn't mind being remembered as somebody that simply, put out some really good music. That would be that would be good enough for me right there. So I'll just stick with that. That'd be good.
Bernie, thank you so much for this interview. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for being so nice to a young cat trying to understand this business and being so open and being so warm. Thank you for what you've done for this industry. I can keep saying thank you till the end of the day, but really just one big thank you for the person that you are and what you've given us when it comes to Canadian music. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Rudy. Thank you very much. That's a great compliment, and I appreciate it. Thank you.